Hey everyone, so I have a special guest for you guys in this video. I'm about to head out and meet Tracy Brown, the dietitian that changed my life, that taught me all about intuitive eating herself, and I don't know, just the lady who led me to finding freedom again, who taught me how to not always have to focus on what I was eating, who taught me how to not count the calories that I was eating. Just live a more happier and free life. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's head out and let's go meet up with Tracy. So, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and then we can kind of just get to it?
Sounds good. Hi everybody, my name is Tracy Brown. I'm a somatic nutrition therapist and registered dietitian. I'm recovered myself from disordered eating back, 15, 20 years ago, and I recognize that people don't really need to know more about nutrition to have a healthy relationship with food. What we really need is to learn how to trust our bodies again. And whether you're an athlete or somebody just not concerned but has interest in general health, it's one of those things that sometimes knowing more isn't what helps us actually be healthier. And so that's the premise of intuitive eating, is learning how to trust our body's signals and using something I call a little bit of gentle nutrition to maybe help guide some choices you make, but also using your body as the main source of feedback as to like how you're eating and if that's working for you or not. So
I used to see a ton of different dietitians before meeting Tracy, and every single one would not preach this. They would preach everything and anything, but it was always very frustrating for me because they would just talk about the food pyramid and how you should eat this, not this, and how to gain weight, like you just need to eat. And I just couldn't get that, and I didn't feel like I trusted any of them enough to listen to their advice, I guess you could say. And so when I met Tracy in Gainesville when I was in college and was introduced to this thing called intuitive eating. And so let's just talk about, number one, what is intuitive eating? And
Gotcha. Intuitive eating is actually a really natural process that we're all born with. We're all born with the ability to know when we're hungry and stop when we're full, but along the way, external influences have gotten in the way with that, and one of them can be maybe well-intentioned, but a little bit misinformed, like health experts or our family, or certainly media and the dieting industry has taught us that like we can't trust our bodies and that there's a right way to eat. Yeah. But I look at it as like, well, there are how many billions of people on the planet, so there have to be billions of different right ways to eat. Mm-hmm. And so intuitive eating is really coming back home to yourself, meaning you're the only one that knows when you're hungry and knows what is enough, and nobody else can know that. So in one hand, it can be a very radically freeing approach, but I also know it's scary because we do live in a very fat-phobic, thin-obsessed world. So it makes us feel like that if we don't have a certain kind of body that we can't trust how it is that we need to be.
Yeah. And then, okay, so that's what intuitive eating is. For me, I, like you said, like I didn't feel like I could trust my body, and I didn't. When you started talking about this whole thing, like intuitive eating, like for me, after suffering from an eating disorder, when I did try to gain weight, it was always just more of binging on food just to kind of get the weight on me, because that's the only way. I didn't know how to just eat normal. Like,
right.
Thinking back to when I was a kid, or even just years before this eating disorder came, I could just eat and not think twice about it, and I would just stop naturally when I wasn't hungry anymore, and like eat when I was hungry, and I just like couldn't grasp that idea anymore, and I didn't feel like I could trust my body anymore. So kind of just talk about, for people like that were in my shoes and don't know how to start this whole intuitive eating thing. Like where can they start if they don't feel like they can trust themselves, if they've been starving their bodies, if they've been binge eating?
Right. No, it's really, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is hard to jump right into intuitive eating when you've been so disconnected from your signals and trust in yourself for so long. Most of my clients that I work with at the beginning, whether there's binge eating or restricting, or maybe again you're someone who's just kind of really really, really into fitness, but it's kind of gotten a little bit far over to where you feel guilty a lot for what you eat if it's not on the plan or the right rules, is that sometimes it's important to have a little bit of structure, but not in a good food, bad food kind of way. It's more about structure in providing for yourself, meaning regular meals and snacks is just like a really great place to start, and making sure you're eating enough. A lot of times people will, like, they think they're eating enough, but usually they're not. They're so disconnected that they don't recognize that they're actually maybe only eating 50% of their calorie intake by 6 p.m. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like they think they're binging all night long when really they're deprivation-driven eating.
Yeah.
So what regular meals and snacks can do for people, like literally having I'm eating by a certain time after I get up. And it sounds a little bit like, well, isn't this just another diet? But really, you're learning how to provide for yourself versus deprive yourself.
Yeah.
And even if you're struggling with binge eating, there's some level of the intuitive eating actually provides a structure within itself, meaning you do have signals of when to stop. So when you honor that, you're going to be not eating too much, if that makes sense.
No, yes. And I like how you said, like, you don't know, like, until you start kind of becoming more aware of what you eat, you don't realize how little you're eating. Because for me, I thought I was overeating, like I thought I was eating enough, and then Tracy had me keep food journals, and I would look back embarrassed and sometimes even add little things to it, like, because I was like, I can't show her this, like, this is like under 1,000 calories, and like I would like add things here and there, and like she would have me jot down like my feelings, and I started realizing how nervous just being around food in general, and how like just like bad I would feel after anything I ate and everything. And so
so I'm glad you mentioned that. It's really normal. It's like when you start refeeding and re-eating again, that you're going to start running into first what seems like all the food rules that you may have had over a span of years. And it's really important to do some challenging those food rules. Well, who says that's too much, and where did we get that? And challenging, like, well, inherently, like, there's no good or bad food. I mean, my body might react in certain ways to certain foods, but inherently eating a cookie isn't going to make me gain weight the next day, even if, regardless of what that means about you, if you had a cookie or not. But like, from a metabolic perspective, that's not going to make you gain weight, but the belief that makes you gain weight is going to make somebody feel really bad in a fat phobic culture. So it's challenging, like, okay, well, is that really your body or is that your mind?
No, and I remember you specifically telling me, I was jotting down, recalling like what I had eaten in a day or something like that, and I had said something along the lines of, I was at my sorority house and I was gonna make a sandwich, but they didn't have whole wheat bread, and like I didn't want to use the white bread. And instantly you were like, well, what's wrong with white bread? Like, what is so bad about white bread? And I remember not really having a reason to back it up and being like, well, it just is, like, it's just not good, and like I didn't know. And so that is like key in the very beginning, to be just challenging all those beliefs that you've had for so long in your mind. I know that was one of mine, like just like the fact of carbs being bad in my mind. Like I would just like binge on like protein things and vegetables. And so I know that is a great tip when you're first starting intuitive eating.
I think if to sum that up, that would mean one of the tips with getting started with eating is full permission to eat.
Yes.
Full permission is like, it doesn't mean that you're going to feel 100% okay, but you actually need real proof of what your brain's saying. Because a lot of times we think that I eat this white bread, and oh my gosh, I'm going to like, something bad's going to happen to me, aka gain weight, when really it's another way to kind of also avoid what it is you're feeling. Because if you get really involved in all those food rules, you're not really connected to like, oh, I had something that was like not whole grain yesterday and I wasn't freaking out. Today I am freaking out. Is this really about the white bread? Because you can eat half of your grain intake and not whole grains and still get your fiber requirements met and all those nutrition things met. So it's not always about like eating the right food or not.
And I know like when you do start not listening to your body and like what you're really wanting, and you start trying to just say, oh, like maybe I am craving white bread or I'm craving a cookie, but I can't have that because it's bad, so I'm just going to fill up on vegetables. But that's where, like, for me at least, binge eating came into play, because and I never really gained weight because I was always binging on healthy foods, but it was just making me feel terrible about myself, because I would want something but not let myself have it. And so instead of eating, say, a small bowl of ice cream, I would just eat tons and tons of vegetables to the point where I would go to bed feeling sick at night. And I'd wake up the next morning and be like, oh, I ate so much, I'm just going to starve myself the rest of the day. And then the next night it would happen all over again. It's just this
So it's a good
cycle.
illustration of actually in that moment, the vegetables were the least healthy thing you could have done.
Yes.
The most physically and emotionally.
Vegetables being unhealthy.
Right,
Yes.
hear that, exactly. That there are contexts where that doesn't work. I do have people that binge on broccoli or apples thinking, well, it's okay because, it's healthy, AKA in our culture, low calorie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've attached so much like healthy equaling weighing less that we're actually missing out on so much of what actual true health is, which is like this combination of mental, physical, emotional, and even spiritual health. That like it doesn't feel very mentally, emotionally, spiritually healthy to be binging on broccoli. Or apples. One, your stomach's going to kill you that night and feel terrible, so not so healthy. And then secondly, just the emotional toll that takes on somebody to like feel like you can't have what you want or you don't deserve to have what you want, as well as just physically feeling bad. So like I said, we've talked about permission to eat, and we've talked about eating enough as a first 2 steps to intuitive eating. I know a hang up that a lot of people have in getting started is they're worried about their weight. And so it's totally true. Yeah, it's a huge fear, and that's one of the reasons why people move forward. Sometimes it feels like slowly in this process because I think we get so attached to like, if I gain weight, something bad's it's gonna happen to me, or I'm gonna be not seen as like successful enough or have enough willpower. And the truth is that like we don't have that much control over what our natural weights need to be.
And I remember you saying that to me because I would talk about like fears and stuff, and you would say like, well, what would be the worst that would happen? That you gain weight? Isn't that number one what you're here for, kind of? And I was like, well, yeah, but I don't know, there's just like this fear inside of me. And it just crazy how like you do really need someone that is kind of just real with you and kind of just there for accountability, because as soon as I started listening to her and like challenging my fears, I started gaining weight that was healthy. And yes, like, so for intuitive eating, like it helped me gain weight, but that's in the place like I needed to be. It can help in both ways. It can be for someone to lose weight. It gets you back to your natural state.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Is that intuitive eating is very weight neutral, meaning if you are above your natural weight, which we all have a range where our body wants to be, if you're above that, people do slowly lose weight. It's not a weight loss tool, and I know a lot of people do try. I have clients that come in like kind of like one foot in both camps. They want to lose weight, but they want to be free. So I know they still struggle with like cutting corners a little bit.
All the bad diets come in.
Well,
they just ruin that metabolism and just make you feel terrible because you feel like a failure.
Right. So it's like I do understand the desire to want to lose weight in this culture. Who wants to be part of a stigmatized group if you're happen to have a larger natural set point. So I totally get that, and that's part of the process of making some peace with that. But intuitive eating is very weight neutral. So if you're about where you need to be, you'll stay around that. Even if you're eating a normal amount of calories, 2,000 calories or more a day, if you're eating that, you're not necessarily going to go up. If you're below your natural weight like you were, yes, you gain weight, but it wasn't because you pushed yourself so hard to get there. Your body naturally went to where it needed to go. And so I know for those of you who may be struggling with not okay with your body, intuitive eating is a process that you can't really screw up. It's just more about learning and recognizing that like you're going to have, the closer you are to a more natural weight, you're going to have more freedom and less food obsession and less a need to count and worry, and even use exercise, something that could be healthy, as a way to compensate for your quote unquote badness of not having the right weight or eating the wrong food. So like I said, I do understand that like that fear about that, but there's some level of like, I guess I tell people, can you be flexible enough and be okay enough of where your body is right now to like have one step closer towards freedom? And I know that's like a day-to-day decision for most people.
It really is. And I just have to say from like a personal standpoint that freedom is so liberating. Like it's so refreshing to finally feel again. It's like the freedom that I used to have before all this came up into my life, where if I want ice cream, I can have it. And like I can stop myself at a decent portion because I know that it's there tomorrow, and I know that I can have it again tomorrow if I really want it. So I can stopped instead of like just sitting there eating the whole carton of it, because I'm like, oh, I can't ever have this again.
Right?
So.
And that's the permission to eat. I will say, you know, coming from both of our perspectives, I mean, we probably have a little bit of privilege in this process because our natural weights both ended up being something that culturally is still deemed quote unquote acceptable. So it doesn't make the process any easier for anybody. It's just that I know that if you happen to have a higher set point, it's still it's a little extra scary to be able to like hear all this from people who, okay, we're recovered and intuitive eaters, and we still kind of maintain some level of like cultural acceptability. So all of you listening out there to see us and think, well, that's great for you all because you're both still small, is that like, you know, we hear you about that, and you'll still gain the same freedom. It's just that I think that you'll learn to start caring less about what everybody else thinks within their own prejudice about that.
And that is like, that right there is healthy, guys. Like, healthy is not a specific weight. Like, healthy is being happy like with your body and like what the perfect version of you is. Like, not trying to compare yourself to me or to her or to anyone else out there. Like I love social media and what it can do to motivate and inspire, but it can also do the exact opposite and make this whole comparison game where you're feeling terrible about yourself all the time because you're comparing yourself.
Right.
And so, like, intuitive eating is great for just finally getting back to that happy place and being confident in who you are and just being happy with who you are and what your natural body is. And that is beautiful in itself. Like,
absolutely.
You don't need to be a perfect weight. You don't need to have perfect hair, perfect skin. And like, that's what I stand for in so many of my videos, as you've seen, guys. But it's just being happy with who you are.
Well, I guess just to repeat that in a little bit different words, it's about coming home to yourself, is that you are going to exude what it is that, what really is going to attract people to you. It's not going to be about like if, you know, you've got abs or you don't, or anything else that's like socially deemed as acceptable, or even like anything that goes wrong around the fitness world. That's really important to recognize. Like, fitness is not a look. Fitness is like what you're able to do with this awesome body you have, whether you're a size 20 or you're a size 2. All bodies are awesome and all bodies have potential to be fit. So, you know, that's what just part of this freedom is about as well. So.
Well, I think like that kind of wraps up just everything that we can provide with intuitive eating. And I actually just wrote a blog post for you guys too on just summing this all up and just leading you to books that I have found helpful, and a book on intuitive eating. It's called Intuitive Eating, and I linked that in there, and I will link Tracy in there. And just for you guys, just to kind of start your own journey on intuitive eating. And of course, as always, comment below any questions you may have, and me and Tracy will both be trying to answer those for you.
That's good, yeah.
And until next time, I hope you guys can find freedom with this video, with intuitive eating, and I love you guys all.
Take care.
Bye.